Hi there, everyone. Nubkeks here. When I was going through my comments on YouTube this morning, I got a comment on a video from the start of Shadowlands where I ranked the ranged DPS spec in terms of what is the most fun. And I got a comment here from Kaney saying, do you still feel the same way now in 9.0.5? And when I thought about it, I realized that the answer was very much no. Very much no. So what we're going to do in today's video, we're going to go through all the different specs. I'll try to be relatively quick, and I'll give you my opinion on those specs and sort of what has changed. Some specs that I used to love that have sort of fallen off for me, lost interest, and then some specs which I hated, which I actually now like. Again, guys, please remember, I know, like, when I talk about this whole video, like, again, what's the most fun? I get a lot of comments which are like, but this just like it was top of the damage charts. Guys, please, please, I beg you, please. This is what's most fun, please. It's what's most fun, okay? This is about what I enjoy. This is not about what's the top spec right now, okay? Please. Okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, I've literally tried to do tier list videos before, and you can literally jump in with a fucking giant splash screen in the first second and be like, this is just for fun. It's not about what's strong. And you will literally get comments instantly being like, oh, well, this is actually stronger, so I don't know what... Whatever. Right. Rant over. So let's actually do the video. Let's actually do the video. Okay. These are the different ways I'm ranking stuff. It's only okay for the default place I'm going to put things. Stuff that has potential. So maybe some specs which I haven't played, but I'm really looking forward to playing will go in here. Specs I know I love are here. And then specs which are not for me. Yeah, you get it. Arms Warrior first up. We'll actually do all the warrior specs here. I'm going to put arms in the has potential slot. So I've actually been playing a bit of arms in the last week or so. Things I like about arms, I actually like that it's a very simple spec. I think that that's its biggest strength and its biggest weakness. It's a very simple spec. There's not a whole ton going on, which actually, generally speaking, I actually do generally enjoy. I like to focus more on the actual fights. And yeah, the actual dungeons, the actual raids, and the difficulty, have it come from there more so than playing a super difficult class. At the same time, it's just very satisfying going in and blade storming on stuff, slamming things that executes really fun. And they've got 4 quite interesting, actually, covenants. It's tough deciding on a covenant. So for me, Arms Warrior has potential. It wouldn't go in the top slot because I think it is actually just a little bit too simple, but I do have to say I like it. The next warrior spec then is Fury. And for me, I'm actually going to put Fury. It's kind of a tough one. I'm actually going to put it up in the has potential slot as well. I haven't played this yet, but I'm actually surprisingly looking forward to giving it another spin. This is a spec I did not like much on the Shadowlands beta. I found it was way too spammy. I didn't enjoy it. But I'm quite interested to try it out now, especially with the Signet of Tormented Kings legendary, which the DPS warriors often use, where when you pop your major DPS cooldown, it can pop one of the other ones from the other specs, right? So you pop Recklessness, and you might just randomly pop a Blade Storm or pop an Avatar, that sort of thing. I think that's really fun, really cool, and they are absolutely slamming the damage right now as well. They are, I would say, overall a better spec generally than Arms right now. So yeah, I think Fury actually does have some potential. I'm looking forward to trying it again. And then finally, Protection Warrior. Again, I'm putting up in the has potential slot here. I think when I ranked the classes for the beta and what I might actually play, I'm pretty sure Warrior might have been last. It was in the bottom 3 out of all the classes in the game. As you can see, things have really changed here. Protection Warrior, I think, is really interesting, especially with the Necrolord Covenant, buffing your teammates with the banner. Super cool. And then you still have awesome options with, you know, honestly, all of the Covenants are pretty cool. They've got a lot of buffs over the course of Shadowlands. They were pretty rough on the beta. Like, they were okay, they were solid enough, but they really weren't standing out above the other tanks. Now they do more damage. They have way more interesting legendaries like Reprisal. I did a whole video on it with our guild's tank, one of our guild tanks, just last week. So go check that out if you want to hear more about Warrior protection. But yeah, I think Warrior is actually looking pretty solid. This is one of the specs, one of the classes I have at 60, and I'm going to be playing. I am playing, and I will be continuing to play over the next few weeks, just really trying it out because it seems pretty cool. Next up then is Rogue, the Rouge. Assassination. Love it. I love it. I really do. Assassination for me, similarly to the Arms Warrior, it's a relatively simple spec. I think it's one of the lowest APM specs in the game. Like, the amount of buttons you press in a minute, right, is actually very low for assassination. There's a lot of downtime where you're waiting for your energy to come back. For me, again, that's actually something I really like. It's more about planning how you're going to spend your energy and your combo points, pooling them up and then dropping them in a big burst. Obviously, Assassination Rogue has jumped up as well in patch 9.0.5 with their buffs and with the reworked Venthyr Covenant Flagellation. I did a video on that as well. They've jumped up those rankings. They are absolutely slamming it single target. The spec definitely struggles in AoE. It's nowhere near as good or as fluid in AoE, but I still enjoy the multi-dot aspect. It's a spec which is quite focused on its damage over time effects. And yeah, the new Venthyr Flagellation, just getting that haste and building it up in your Vendetta, super cool, super fun. It's a spec that I just really enjoy. It's chill, but it's got engaging, slow-paced gameplay, and I like that. Next up is Outlaw. It's not for me. Outlaw, not for me. Nope. First spec in the bottom tier for me personally. Obviously, Outlaw is a great spec. It's by far the best AoE spec for Rogue. They're very strong. They're actually pretty good single target as well. They're solid enough. However, for me, it's not for me. I just don't enjoy Outlaw. I'll give it another go, of course. I got my Rogue to 60 as well. It's getting geared too. But yeah, what I don't like about Outlaw, I don't like the randomness of Roll the Bones. I just find it kind of annoying. And although I do like simple specs, I find that the rotation for me is just a bit too mindlessly spammy. I prefer with, for example, with Assassination and Arms, I like that, okay, they can be a little, certainly Arms can be a bit mindlessly spammy at times, but you still have those big cooldowns that you're working towards and planning out like, okay, what am I going to do in my Colossus Smash window? What am I going to do in my Shiv window? With Outlaw, you don't have that half as much. It's just not for me. Don't like it. Sub is only okay. Unfortunately, Sub, I think it was my second highest ranked melee DPS spec on the beta. It has really dropped off. What are the reasons it's really dropped off? Pretty simple. It got nerfed quite a bit, you know, coming into the live game. It was nerfed a lot. The legendaries, which were super fun, super badass, got nerfed into the ground. Now, in my opinion, their legendary choices are fairly lackluster. I still love the Shadowlands playstyle, but the thing that would just right now puts me off playing Sub is it's just pretty weak, right? It's not as good in single target as Assassination. It's not as good in AoE as Outlaw. So I'm kind of going, when and why would I ever play this? So that makes it only okay. It's a spec I want to love. Shadow Dance is an awesome cooldown. It's super fun. But yeah, it's only okay. Oh, next up is Priest, actually. This is what I play right now. I feel very favorably towards Priest. It feels weird to put it in has potential. Disc, I'm going to put Disc up in the love it spec because I think it is really unique. You know, that big ramp up you've got in Raid to get out your big Spirit Shell. I think that's super fun, super cool. The only major issue I have with Disc Priest is that I'm Raid leading and it's extremely difficult to Raid lead when you're playing Disc. In fact, I just have to have the other officers do it on the fights where I was playing Disc. Because, I mean, you're just not going to, if you have to pay attention to, you know, a 20-second ramp up where you're not really able to move. You have to really turret up to get the most out of that Spirit Shell. You got to be concentrating on that, and you're not going to have the concentration you need on the actual mechanics. You're not going to be looking at them half as much. So, yeah, that's the issue with Disc, but it is super fun in dungeons as well. It's a nice, fast-paced spec. I actually prefer Holy Priest. I would rank... we're not going to rank these within the tiers, but if we were, I would put Holy Priest above Discipline Priest. I enjoy Holy Priest more. The Flash Concentration Legendary was that extra spicy sauce that Holy Priest needed to make it really engaging, which makes your heal spell cast much faster, be a little bit stronger, and it just becomes this HPS and mana, healing per mana, HPM, just super intensive, like super valuable spell. That heal just becomes a powerhouse. And that feels really good. Playing around your Holy Words is still super fun. Honestly, pressing Holy Word Salvation in Raid is glorious, right? It's one of the most satisfying Raid cooldowns, just this massive burst of healing and a ton of healing over time, over the next few seconds through Holy Word Salvation. Same with Divine Hymn, got massively buffed. Cool utility there. Obviously, the weakness of Holy Priest is that in terms of the actual healing output, they're not as high as the other healers, you know? They're not great in terms of Raid or Mythic Plus. They don't have the HBS to compete at the top levels, but for most levels of the game, like I heal any of the dungeons we do now is Holy over Disc, just because it's more fun. You still bring Power Infusion for the DPS. It's fine. It's still really, really good. So yeah, I actually love Holy. And then Shadow Priest, I also really enjoy as well. Probably rank Shadow and Holy are kind of equal for me. I love them both, and then Disc a small bit behind. Shadow Priest is awesome. It's a super powerful single target spec with really short cooldowns. They have phenomenal priority damage. Shadow Priest is weird because I played it last expansion too. It's a completely different spec this expansion. Last expansion, Shadow Priest was just really high sustained AoE and like split cleave damage. They don't do that at all now. They don't do that at all. They're much more about that void form burst damage and single target priority damage. They're actually really awesome for that in dungeons. They're awesome for that in most raid fights. They're bad in any raid fights where you've got like big AoE, especially if you got burst AoE, forget it. They're not going to do anything, but their single target is insane. And it's just a super fun spec, right? Especially Night Fae Shadow Priest, which I'm playing right now. This lets you use the Fae Guardian's Covenant ability. Gives you 20 seconds of double cooldown reduction on your major cooldown. You can obviously give that to other people too, but you're a DPS, you use it on yourself. But as Shadow, you can make your Void form a 1 minute and 10-second cooldown. So you have this big, bursty, fast-paced, rotation-altering CD. It's really, really strong on a 1 minute, 10-second cooldown. It's fantastic, really, really good. Next up, we have the Warlocks. I'm going to be a little bit crazy here, I guess you might say. I'm going to say Affliction for me is only okay. Affliction Warlock's very strong. They're very strong. They do a ton of damage. Unlike Shadow Priest, they're great in that AoE and raid as well. They scale up with more targets really strongly because of Malefic Rapture and so on. They're great. They're a super good spec. Probably not as good in Mythic Plus as Shadow Priest, for example, in comparison. But in raiding, they're also fantastic, really strong. But I just feel like they're a little bit boring. I don't know. There's something about it that just doesn't quite grab me. I guess it's that they are a little bit more sort of dot focused in that sense. Their cooldown's not as exciting at all. Like you've got Dark Soul Misery, which gives you a bunch of haste. You've got your Dark Glare, which sort of extends your dots. And those are cool effects, don't get me wrong. But it just doesn't have the bang that Void Form does or the bang that Combustion does, right? So that's the thing that sort of makes me a little bit less impressed with Affliction Warlock. Although they're super strong, they lack the sort of the big gameplay enhancing cooldown that gives you that moment of excitement in your rotation that really sets it apart. Demonology? Demonology, though, I'm putting it up and love it. Okay, this is a little bit of a stretch because, to be fair, my Warlock is still at level 57. I haven't been playing it as much as these other classes. In fact, all these other classes so far, I have at level 60. What do you know? But Warlock is still at 57. I haven't played it as much as the other ones. But I really enjoy Demonology. And I'm really looking forward to playing it again. So technically, it probably should be in the has potential section because I haven't actually played it enough to confirm that I love it. But I'm pretty sure I love it. I'm pretty sure I love it. Again, compared to Affliction, these guys are all about that big bursty cooldown, get that Tyrant out, and just super awesome. Obviously, the big downside for Demonology is that in terms of higher level content, it's really not as good. They get punished exceptionally hard by movement. Movement is not good. If their ramp up for their Demon Tyrant gets interrupted, they're screwed. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but they are a super, super fun spec. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing more Demonology. And then Destruction is not for me. You can tell that's how much I love Demonology, that I'm not really too impressed or too excited about these other two Warlock specs, especially because Affliction plays Night Fae. Soul Rot, it's just a boring Covenant ability. It's just another big dot. It doesn't do anything for me. Whereas going in with I think a Necrolord Warlock would be super fun, right? With those Decimating Bolts and big Demon Bolts and Demonology. Anyway, we're talking about Destruction. Destruction is not for me. This spec just has no appeal to me at all. I've been thinking about this. I don't remember if I said this back in the video I did during the beta, but what I realized back then, and I will tell you now, in case I didn't back then, is that I think for me, in World of Warcraft, that generally speaking, for something to feel powerful and feel impactful, that's often, for me, much more about being fast and snappy. So what I'm thinking is, I've already mentioned it, Shadow Priest Void Form. Your rotation is super fast, super snappy. All these instant cast Devouring Plague, instant cast Void Bolt, and you're just blasting damage. If you think about Fire Mage Combustion, it's just all these instant cast Pyroblast, Fire Blast. It's really fast paced. Stuff is just flying out, it's exploding, boom. Demon Bolts and Demonology Warlock, those instant cast Demon Bolts, boom, boom, boom. I I think with Destruction, what they try to do, obviously you've got lots of things that speed up your Chaos Bolt. I get that. But I think that I think Chaos Bolt is supposed to feel like this really powerful spell. But for me, because it has such a slow cast time compared to a lot of other range specs in the game, because it has even melee specs, which are even faster, they're nearly always instant cast stuff. Such a slow cast time that it just feels slow. It just feels sluggish. It doesn't feel awesome, right? I'd much rather be a fire mage snapping out those instant pyros. That feels badass. A frost mage snapping out those instant ice lances with fingers of frost feels powerful. Casting. Big chaos bolt. Nah, don't care. Big soulfire, big old cast on it. Doesn't feel good. I think maybe that stuff felt powerful back in classic WoW. But for me, it doesn't really feel powerful anymore. It just feels sluggish. Sluggish is the word. We'll see. I'll come back and I'll play it more, but I don't think it's for me. Next up, we have the Paladin specs, which are neatly stacked in a row. Oh, look, they're all sort of stacked in a row. Have they always been stacked in a row? Maybe they've always been together. Am I stupid? Probably, yeah. Okay, Paladin. Holy Paladin, I think it's... Holy Paladin. It's only okay. Holy Paladin's only okay. Arguably, this could almost go up to the has potential section. The reason I'm putting this in the only okay section more so is because there are other healing specs, plenty of them, which I would rather play before playing the Holy Paladin. Taken in pure isolation, you could probably put it up in the has potential. I'd like to try it. You know what? Let's put it up in has potential. Let's be a bit more fair. I think it does have some potential. You know, as a melee-based spec, I think that's cool. The Holy Power system, I think, is pretty cool as well. I think that's fun. I will say one of the things I really like is that you've got the Kyrian gameplay style with the 1 minute cooldown if you're throwing out all your hammers. Or then you've got the Ashen Hallow, the big 4 minute cooldown, which really blasts hard in raid. They do a ton of damage. They're extremely strong healer. Yeah, you know what? Has potential is definitely the place this should go. Like I said, though, there are other healers that I would rather play before this one. But I do think it is a great solid spec. Protection Paladin. Again, I would put Protection Paladin probably up in the has potential section. They are super squishy. They are the squishiest tank, I think, as far as I can tell. They're super squishy. They get blasted. They get ass clapped. But they also are the most damagey tank. They clap back in return. They do tons of damage. They also have got phenomenal utility for their group. They can off-heal. They can bring blessings. They bring auras. They've got awesome stuff that they can do. Really, really nice. So yeah, Protection Paladin, it's a bit of a crazy tank right now because it's the glass cannon tank, as it were. And to me, that's actually quite appealing. I think that's pretty cool. And then we have Ret Paladin. I think I'd probably put Ret Paladin up in the has potential section as well. I would put this very much at the bottom of that section, though. I think Ret Paladin brings some awesome burst. Like really awesome burst, especially burst AoE damage, which is super cool, super satisfying. And let's be honest, at least I have barely seen any Ret Paladins around at all. So that makes it kind of appealing to me as being like a pretty cool, pretty fun spec. I know you guys at PvP probably saw them a lot. I think they're pretty strong there. But certainly in PvE, I genuinely can't remember seeing a Ret Paladin for all of Shadowlands. I'm pretty sure. I think we had one apply to our guild, but we were full. But I think that's it. We've barely seen any, but I think they are pretty cool and underrated, and I like that. Next up then, Druids. Balance. Balance is 100% a love it spec. I actually find it funny because Druid is my second most geared character. I'm gearing it up actively right now because I really want to play all the specs, try them all out. I love Balance though. And the funny thing is that my Balance Druid at like 200 item level is way more fun in Torghast than my Priest at 220. And they improved Priest a lot in 9.0.5. They gave us a bunch of new anima powers, which are super fun. But my goodness, Balanced Druid is just a joy to play. You've got all those instant cast. It is probably the go-to multi-dot split cleave spec alongside Affliction Warlock. Just phenomenal. That sort of split cleave with your dots, with Starfall running. You can cast while you're moving with Stellar Drift Talented when you have Starfall active, which is insane. But like for Torghast especially, like I just pull the whole floor for fun, and you're just running around, like you're sprinting around in cat form, Starfall going in, you're dropping in treants to tank, and you've got Typhoons knocking them back, Vortex, lock them down. You can root the important ones that are going to kill you. You can heal yourself. It is just ridiculous ridiculous fun. It is so much fun. Just an awesome toolkit. It is, to be very, very, very simple spec, which again is something that does actually genuinely appeal to me. I like the more simple specs at the moment. Balance Druid is definitely that. It's simple, but it's super effective. For a relatively small toolkit of buttons that you actually press, they accomplish a whole lot. There's so much utility baked in. Next up, we have Feral Druid. I'm going to say this is not for me, however. They obviously bring a lot of that similar Druid utility, and Feral Druid at the moment is probably in the best spot it's been in for as long as I can remember. Like, Feral Druids are absolutely clapping in single target. They're doing really well. I guess they're probably a little bit sad that Assassination Rogue is also kind of up there at the moment too. That feels a bit bad for Feral. But no, I think Feral Druid, they've got a lot going for it, but it's just not for me. This is one of the specs that I enjoyed by far the least in the beta. I just couldn't enjoy it. Usually what happens when I'm playing Feral Druid, I'm just sitting there thinking, man, I would much rather be a rogue right now. I'd much rather be playing a rogue. I think it's just cooler. It's more fun. I don't know. I will obviously give it a go because my Druid is getting actively geared. So we will see. I'll give it a go. We'll run it through some dungeons. We'll run it through some raid fights. We'll see how it plays. But I'm really expecting nothing from Feral Druid. It's just not for me. Guardian Druid. This is a love it spec for me. This is a love it spec. I think I ranked this very highly in my tank rankings on the beta, and that remains true in patch 9.0.5. They are super, super duper tanky. These guys can take a hit. They also do pretty solid damage now. Certainly in raiding, they do solid enough damage. But yeah, exactly what I said about it on the beta. It's a very survivable tank, and it's very simple. It's very accessible. What is one of the biggest issues with tanking in World of Warcraft? Well, you don't really tank in PvP. Okay, so that's out the window. Raid spots are super limited, so that's sort of out the window. Mythic plus dungeons, this is the big problem. Yeah, this is the big problem. Tanking is very hard in Mythic plus dungeons. You are expected to lead the group. You're expected to know the whole dungeon, to know the route, to know what to pull, to lead like the crowd control, to lead the interrupts. There's a ton of stuff you are expected to do and to know. If you are playing a difficult tank or a complicated tank, this is the reason that there's a shortage of tanks. This is the reason. It's because it's just, you're just going to get shit on, right? Which nobody wants. Guardian Druid is that wonderful entry point of just a really straightforward, simple tank that's super effective. You can focus on the dungeon. You can focus on the content that you're doing and be extremely successful at doing it without this massive barrier to entry. Or there's still a barrier to entry, but you're reducing that. And that's why I love it. Resto Druid, likewise, I'm putting up in love it. This is a spec I'm super excited to play more of. I'm sort of debating on which legendaries to build first. Like, should I just build rank 1 legendary? I've got the Soul Ash now. It's like, do I build a legendary for each one and test them out as quickly as possible? Or do I actually start, like, boost up my Balance Druid as much as possible so I can get into more dungeons and raids? We'll see. But yeah, Resto Druid, big fan. I just love the healing over time playstyle. They're actually doing a ton of healing throughput now in 9.0.5. They got some buffs, which have been very effective. So that is awesome to see. It's where they should be. Same thing with Holy Priest. Holy Priest it should heal more than Discipline Priest, because Discipline Priest is providing shielding and damage reduction, and it does more damage. Same thing with Holy Paladin. They bring damage reduction, and they do more damage. You know, there should be a balance there. Healers that only really heal should do more healing. That's pretty straightforward. I know that pisses a lot of people off. I've said that before and it really annoyed people, but I'm saying it again. But yeah, Resto Druid I think is looking pretty solid. They have wonderful utility. Again, one of the things I really like as well is they have very fast spells. A lot of casting on the move. Obviously, Tranquility you have to stop and cast. But other than that, you've got quick spells, stacking up your heal over time effects on different people. Very, very satisfying. So yeah, pretty awesome. Elemental Shaman got a lot of buffs. I'm going to still say it's only okay, just about. This is, again, a personal thing. But I think if you're an Elemental Shaman, patch 9.0.5, big thumbs up. You are super happy. They massively buffed Chain Lightning. I think they buffed Earthquake by like 70%. It's crazy. So you're not reliant on your AoE legendary to do good AoE. But Ele Shaman is absolutely clapping in AoE. They have phenomenal sustained AoE damage. Just plowing those Chain Lightnings, plowing those Earthquakes into everything. It is super, super effective at that. The things that personally I don't like about Ele Shaman, Again, I don't find their cooldowns to be as satisfying. Fire Elemental, Storm Elemental even are just quite dull to me personally. I don't love them. Ascendance is it's okay. It's kind of cool. And then I don't like that they are this very immobile spec. But yeah, that's sort of me. It's not really for me, but again, I think if you like Ellie Shaman, I would say, again, this patch is probably the best that they've looked in a long, long time. Much like Feral Druid, this is a great patch for them. Enhancement Shaman is coming up next. Enhancement Shaman, for me, is still only okay. Now, one thing that might change this is if I went Venthyr. That was a problem I ran into when I played Enhancement in Shadowlands. This was my second level 60 character, was my Shaman. The issue I ran into is that I went into the Necrolord Covenant because it was super fun with Resto, and it was super fun with Elemental Necrolord. It was absolutely awful with Enhancement. Venthyr is where it plays well with Enhancement, particularly well. So I'd actually be curious to play these specs as a Venthyr. That might make a big difference because it is a big, satisfying, juicy cooldown. So maybe that is something to return to. It's certainly a spec I will return to. I think this was my #1 spec on the beta. This is what I enjoyed the most, but it just sort of fell short for me when it came to live servers, where I was, considering more seriously how powerful the spec actually was. And, at the start of Shadowlands in 9.0, Enhancement Shaman, it just wasn't a very strong spec. It just wasn't a strong spec. I went Necrolord because it was the best for Resto at the time, and it made Enhancement feel bad. So this is a spec I'll return to, but for now, it has been only okay. I have to rank it off of where it is. We'll see. Maybe it has potential. We'll see. I hope so. And then Resto Shaman has to go up in the Love It section. Really big fan of Resto Shaman. Super satisfying healer to play. Kind of breaking free from that sort of chain heal spamming playstyle from the end of BFA. Now you're much more focused on your Riptides, your healing waves, which is cool. Cloudburst is very satisfying, where you pop down your Cloudburst totem, 15 seconds in advance. You do all your healing, and then it explodes at the end and spreads that healing. So it sort of rewards you for planning ahead, which is cool. Spirit Link totem is just an awesome cooldown. Windrush totem, awesome cooldown. Lots of utility to provide to your group. I think on the beta, I was kind of unimpressed with this. But the more I played Resto Shaman, especially on the live servers, the more I enjoyed it. So yeah, I really, really love this. Super fun healer, really enjoy it. But yeah, the reason I more so went for Priest was that I thought Shadow Priest was better than Ellie Shaman, which it was for 9.0. And I also enjoyed Shadow Priest more than Ellie Shaman, and Enhancement is in the same boat there. So that sort of made that decision for me. Next up, we have the Monk. Brewmaster is... For me, it's only okay. I'm not as excited to try a Brewmaster as these other tanks. This is a low point, I would say, it seems to me, for Brewmaster monks. Compared to, they were basically the best tank, certainly for raiding, for, I think, all of BFA, pretty much. Maybe I'm forgetting a certain tier, but man, they were just on top of the world. Maybe at 9.0.5 with Windwalker getting some nerfs, so they did just get rebuffed again. You might see more Brewmasters. I think actually a lot of people are still playing Brewmasters. I believe they're still super popular because they were the tank of BFA. But I think that they're not as strong as they were back then, which is definitely a big downside. I still think they're very fun. They've got lots of mobility. I think they work well in the kiting meta, throwing your keg in, you've got your Ring of Peace, you've got your rolls, Transcendence, all that stuff is super cool. But I guess for me, it's sort of a case of the overly familiar, I guess is what I would say. They're so familiar. I kind of more interested in playing the new the flashy new Necrolord Reprisal Protection Warrior really catches my eye a lot more. Or the Bear Druid, which is really underrated, catches my eye a lot more than the same old Brewmaster Monk. Yeah, who knew that in a fantasy game, you'd be like, man, what a standard spec, this beer chugging like ninja dude. I don't even know what you call it. Yeah, bizarre. But yeah, that's sort of how I feel. Mistweaver, it's not for me. I think it's a decent spec. I think it's a solid spec. I played Mistweaver. I mained Mistweaver for, I think, an old year. And that was enough. I had my fill. That was great. Or it was even half a tier. I think half a tier I mained Mistweaver. And that was plenty. Been there, done that. Zero interest in going back. I don't know, I just feel like it's a bit simple. I think that, again, they're in a reasonably good spot now. They've got more cooldowns. They've got, obviously, the Invoke cooldown. Invoke Yu'lon being baseline is a lot more interesting. The Ancient Teachings of the Monastery, a lot more interesting. Fist Weaving being more impactful. There's cool stuff there. But, yeah, no, for me, it's just a been there, done that sort of thing. I don't think there's enough new there to really catch my interest and bring me back. So, Mistweaver, there's plenty of other healers that I'd much rather play. So, no, not for me. Windwalker. Windwalker is, that's a tough one, right? That's a tough one. I think Windwalker for me is only okay. The thing that drags this down is definitely the other monk specs. It doesn't wow me enough to bring it up. Kind of like Demo Warlock is just like super just off the rails fun. So that's enough for me to make playing a Warlock worthwhile, even though I have zero interest really in Destro, and I don't really have any interest in Affliction, and I'd be picking a Covenant that would not, a completely non-meta thing. The thing that bothers me about Windwalker is that it just doesn't wow me as much as that, and because I have no interest in the other specs, that really makes me, just generally speaking, less interested in Windwalker. That being said, I mean, they were exceptionally strong in 9.0, though still underrated, funny enough. They got nerfed a lot in 9.0.5 due to bug fixes, but they have been buffed up again. I expect they probably will remain as a very good AoE damage dealer that struggles a bit on single target. So sort of the opposite of the Shadow Priest that I play, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think they're a cool spec. I think they are a cool spec. You know, you've got your Chi, you've got your energy. I think Storm, Earth, and Fire, it's quite a buggy cooldown, but I like that it has 2 charges. You can play around with that. Invoking Zwen is cool too. Fist of Fury, I think, is definitely an issue where it just does not have as much punch. It has a similar problem to Chaos Bolt, where it's this big, long cast time ability. And again, I think the issue that Blizzard runs into in the game is that these big, long cast time abilities are supposed to feel powerful, but they just never manage to actually achieve that. They just feel slow and sluggish. And that's one of the big things. What is supposed to be a highlight of your rotation, the Fist of Fury, just feels kind of slow. So yeah, that's sort of how I feel about them, but I can understand a lot of people loving Windwalker. Havoc Demon Hunter, I still put in, it's only okay. Is this Havoc or Vengeance? No, yeah, it's Havoc. Havoc for me is still, it's only okay. Obviously I did a video with our Havoc Demon Hunter the other day. They got a lot of buffs in 9.0.5, especially the Fel Rush ability. I've played around with it a little bit, started leveling up my Demon Hunter, and yeah, for me, I'm not loving it. Again, that single target rotation is just a little too mindless, to be honest with you. And using Fel Rush as a combat ability just feels a little clunky. It just goes a bit too far to actually make sense. You know, like you go out of range to melee the targets to do your Fel Rush. I mean, against a big raid boss, you won't, but against normal mobs, you absolutely do. It just feels a bit clunky. It feels a bit clunky. There's other specs I would rather play. Vengeance Demon Hunter, again, for me, it's only okay. It's only okay. I think they're fun, leaping around the place and all of that. I think some of this might be some over-familiarity, much like I talked about with the Brewmaster Monk. I mained Demon Hunter in Nyalotha, right, in the previous raid tier. It's very recent memory. So I'm not too excited to go back to them yet. Like maybe further on the expansion I will, but right now, nah. I'm not really too taken with it, especially considering that Vengeance is probably like the most popular tank here in Shadowlands so far. That just turns me off. I'm not that interested. Looking then at the Death Knights, 3 classes to go. Let's blast through. Death Knights, Blood Decay is not for me. It's not for me. The class fantasy is only okay for me. Not a huge fan of the super edgy classes too much. I don't know. That being said, I just talked about playing Demon Hunter, so I guess I can't really say that. I take it back. I take that back. I don't know. Still though, Blood, not really grabbing my attention. I kind of prefer the tank with a bit more mobility. They are a very immobile sort of tank, which isn't super appealing. That being said, I think they are pretty good. I think they are supposed to be very survivable now. They obviously bring anti-magic zone. We could see a rise of Blood Decay at some point in this expansion. I would not be shocked. We'll have to see. But yeah, for me, it's just not all that appealing. And the self-healing thing, I'm not really that interested in either. So I can understand why people might like this, and I hope to see them rise up again this expansion, because they've been kind of under the radar for a long time, but it's not something I'm personally interested in. Same thing with Frost Decay. It's pretty cool. They're cool, but again, it's not for me. I find that Arms Warrior gives you a very similar gameplay experience, and right now I just would much rather play Arms. I'd be even a bit more interested in Ret Paladin right now. I think those are two specs which to me feel pretty similar to Frost. Big, chunky, like two-handed, bursty hits with your obliterates. That's what appeals to me, and I think those specs right now deliver that in a better way. So it's just, I'm not interested right now. And same thing for Unholy DK, just not interested, to be honest with you. What I don't like about it is that their cooldowns don't quite line up in a way that really, synergizes very well. I mean, Shadow Priest actually does have somewhat a similar issue, which is a little bit annoying, but I don't know. They're also super popular, and that just turns me off, right? The most popular melee spec right now, the strongest melee spec right now, for basically all of Shadowlands so far, in rating certainly. In rating, yeah, we have 3 Unholy DKs in our raid team at the moment, so I just have no interest. It's like this is a spec which is being covered plenty. Yeah, and again, I think it's a cool spec. It's quite different actually in terms of melee. It feels more like a caster than a melee spec, which I think is actually pretty interesting and cool. But I'd personally rather play one of the caster specs. I'd personally rather play them. Hunter is up next. Again, this is a class I'm really not all that interested in. Beast Mastery. It's only okay. I enjoy being able to move at range and do my full rotation. I think that's super cool. And, the whole pet collection minigame is pretty cool as well. But I'm not all that excited. They're not all that strong at the moment either. I've played a lot of Hunter in the past, so I'm not super excited, but it's okay. I could play it and have a reasonably good time. Marksmanship Hunter, again, I would say Marksmanship Hunter is somewhat similar. I think it's okay. I may even put it up in the has potential. I know they're really fallen off. They just got buffed last week because they'd fallen off so hard in terms of damage. I think in terms of gameplay, they are to me the most enjoyable Hunter spec. I think the gameplay changes they made to Marksmanship coming into Shadowlands really elevated the spec. They made the rotation a lot more interesting. I do think they are fun. It is a spec I would like to go back and try more. Yeah, I think I'm actually definitely putting it in the has potential category, and it does not bother me at all that in terms of meta relevance that they are on the decline for sure. But yeah, I remember playing it on the beta now, and it was really fun. So it's something I would like to try it again. Survival, not for me. No interest. Again, my opinion is that Blizzard intends to completely rework Survival, and they just didn't have time for Shadowlands because they received almost no changes. Half of their legendaries are rehashes of Azerite power. Just zero interest. No, I'm not massively interested in the other Hunter specs, and I would much rather play them over this. It's just not for me at all. Arcane Mage, I'm going to put up in the has potential because I have not played this since early. I played my Mage stuff early in the beta. It was one of the first classes I covered. I haven't played it since. But Arcane Mage, I really enjoyed it, and I think it still looks like a super, super fun spec. I really enjoyed the gameplay style. I'm very excited to try it out again. I really am. I think the whole Touch of the Magi burst window is super cool and interesting, like every 45 seconds. Putting your Touch of the Magi on, funneling damage in, then the target explodes. That's awesome. Yeah, I really like it, actually. So I'm looking forward to coming back to this one. Fire Mage, I actually going to put up in the has potential section as well. This was my least favorite range spec on the beta, but they buffed them loads. At the end of the beta, they buffed them a whole ton. So that really changed how Fire Mage plays. And I think that what Fire Mage has going for it right now is a whole lot, right? They've got they're number one, they're super powerful, like crazy OP. They're super tanky. They've got crazy OP damage, great damage single target, great damage AoE. Combustion gives you this big, really satisfying bursty cooldown, and it's on a super short cooldown. You're running with Night Fae with Fire Mage, which reduces that cooldown even more. So yeah, that's just awesome. Again, I think right now we've got like 3 mages, and I think 2 players want to play mage as well in the guild. So it's Fire Mage is just not on the cards for me, but I will certainly play it a bit casually and sort of see where they're at, because it does seem really awesome. They seem like they're having a blast, literally a fire blast here in Shadowlands. It seems like a great spec. So that was one of the big pleasant surprises for Shadowlands when I actually got to the end of the beta and went live, was how much Fire Mage improved from the frankly awful state it was in at the start of the beta. And then Frost Mage, I think, is only okay. I might actually put it down in the it's not for me. Yeah, I don't know. Frost Mage, I don't know. I'm just not all that interested. Like I said, there's already 2 DPS specs in that class that I'm more interested in. Frost Mage, it's very simple, which I usually like, but I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit too on the simple side. I just feel like the slowing utility, like that Frost theme of slowing stuff down, certainly in PvE, doesn't actually feel like it has that much relevance at the moment. So we'll see. I mean, they are doing very well right now, 9.0.5 as well. That is worth noting. They've improved a lot over the course of Shadowlands. Apparently right now they're doing great damage, especially in like Cleave. So they're definitely a spec to watch out for sure. But it's not a spec that I'm rushing out to play. Yeah, I'd rather play the other 2 mage specs, and that's kind of enough for me. I'd probably leave Frost in the back burner, or then I'd rather play, you know, Shadow Priest with Holy Priest, or Balanced Druid with Resto and Bear Druid. You know, I'd rather play these specs which have a bit more variety rather than Frost Mage. That's my feeling. And there you are, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my thoughts on all of the specs at the moment in patch 9.0.5 in Shadowlands. Again, please, this is based off of my opinion. This is what is fun to me personally. This is not a ranking of specs in Raid. Please, comment section, please read the title of the video. The old videos, the old freaking beta ranking videos literally said what's the most fun in the title, and people didn't get it. I give up. Anyway, that's what I think. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.